Elias lay in his bed that night, staring up at the ceiling, the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the window. His mind was restless, turning over the events of the evening like 1,000 whispers he couldn't quite understand. The words Seraphine had said before she left echoed in his mind. Your future, our future, is tied in ways you cannot yet understand. He had wanted to ask her what she meant, but she had already disappeared into the night before he could speak. There was something about her presence that unsettled him, something more than her beauty or the strange way she looked at him. It was as if Seraphine carried a secret, one that was somehow tied to him, to his future. But why him? And what did she mean by our future? The questions swirled in his mind, and though he tried to sleep, the answers refused to come. He finally gave up and rose from the bed, walking to the window. The estate was still and silent, the only sound the occasional rustle of the trees outside. The moon shone brightly, casting long shadows over the grounds. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching, light but purposeful. Elias turned, his heart beating faster, only to see Caden standing in the doorway. "You're up late," Caden remarked, though there was no warmth in his voice. It was clear that something had changed between them. Elias could feel it in the air, thick with unspoken words. Elias nodded, his mind still distracted. "Couldn't sleep." Caden's eyes narrowed, his gaze sharp. "You've been acting strange lately. What happened at dinner tonight?" Elias hesitated, unsure of how to answer. He couldn't very well tell Caden that his mother had looked at him in a way that unsettled him, that he felt drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. Instead, he forced a smile, masking the turmoil inside. "It's nothing," Elias said. "I just have a lot on my mind." Caden didn't seem convinced. "It's not just that. It's her, isn't it?" he said quietly, his voice lower than usual. "My mother. You've been distant since she arrived." Elias stiffened at the mention of Seraphine. He hadn't expected Caden to notice. He had tried so hard to keep his emotions hidden, but somehow it seemed as though everything was unraveling faster than he could control. "I don't know what you mean," Elias muttered, avoiding his friend's gaze. The last thing he wanted was to discuss his feelings for Seraphine, his best friend's mother. The very thought of it made him feel like a fool, but Caden wasn't finished. He took a step closer, his expression growing more serious. "You can't hide things from me, Elias. I know you too well. What's going on with you and my mother?" Elias felt a pang of guilt stab at his chest. Caden was his closest friend, his confidant, and the thought of betraying him in any way felt wrong. But the feelings he had for Seraphine were beyond his control. They were something he couldn't ignore no matter how much he wanted to. "I'm not involved with her," Elias said, though his words felt hollow. He didn't know if he was trying to convince Caden or himself. "I just don't understand what's going on with me. I feel confused." Caden studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I don't know what it is between you two, but be careful, Elias. She's not like other women. She has a past, one that she hides from everyone. And I don't trust it." Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" Caden's eyes darkened. "There's something about her, something dangerous. You don't know the whole story. I don't think anyone does." The words hung in the air like a warning, but before Elias could ask more, Caden turned and left, disappearing into the shadows of the hallway. Elias was left alone with his thoughts, the words lingering in his mind. The next day, things between Elias and Seraphine became even more strained. She seemed distant, as if she were carrying some heavy burden that she didn't want to share. And yet every time their eyes met, Elias felt that same pull, that same unexplainable connection. She was always near, always just out of reach. Elias couldn't stop thinking about her. In the garden that afternoon, he found himself walking alone, hoping for some clarity. The garden, with its twisting vines and ancient stone statues, had always been a place where Elias sought peace. But today it only felt oppressive. And then, just as he thought he might lose himself to his thoughts, he saw her, Seraphine, standing near the fountain, her face turned toward the sky. The soft breeze tousled her dark hair, and for a moment she looked like someone from another time. Someone who didn't belong in the world Elias knew. When she turned and saw him, her expression softened, but there was an undeniable sadness in her eyes. She looked as if she wanted to speak, but the words never came. Elias took a step toward her, unable to stop himself. "Seraphine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is it? What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm being pulled into something I don't understand?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gazed at him with an intensity that made his heart race. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "You're right to feel lost, Elias," she said softly. "You are at the center of something far bigger than you know. Your blood, your family. It's all connected to the curse. The curse that has haunted us for generations." Elias felt his breath catch in his throat. "What curse? What are you talking about?" Seraphine took a step back, her eyes clouded with regret. "The curse that binds our fates. That binds you to me. I never wanted you to be part of this, but there is no escaping it now. It's too late." Elias was frozen, his mind struggling to process her words. The tension between them was thick, charged with a kind of inevitability that he couldn't ignore. His heart pounded in his chest as he looked at her, desperate for answers. "What do you mean? How are we connected? You're Caden's mother," he stammered, as if the very thought of it made no sense. She shook her head, a sad smile touching her lips. "It's not that simple." "Nothing ever is it?" "I'm sorry, Elias. But the truth is you are tied to me in ways I never wanted. And I fear that if we don't face what's coming, everything will be lost." Before Elias could ask more, Seraphine turned away, her figure disappearing into the shadows of the garden. As she left, a cold feeling settled in his chest, a sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake. Something was coming, something dangerous, something that could change everything. Cliffhanger. The evening sun cast long golden shadows across the royal estate. Elias, the young prince, walked through the royal gardens with a heavy heart. His footsteps were light, but his thoughts were a storm. He had always been the dutiful heir, the one who would someday wear the crown of his kingdom. But lately, he had begun to wonder if the life he was born into was really his own. His best friend, Caden, had invited him over for a quiet evening away from the palace, a rare escape from the heavy burdens of being a prince. Caden's family lived in a smaller estate within the royal grounds, a place where the weight of the kingdom's expectations seemed far away. Yet even here, Elias felt it, that quiet pressure, always there, pulling at him, reminding him that he was never truly free. As he approached the door of the estate, he was greeted by a figure that made his heart skip a beat. Lady Seraphine stood at the threshold, her presence like the stillness before a storm. She was Caden's mother, a woman of quiet grace and untold mystery. Tall, with silver-gray eyes that seemed to hold secrets from ages past, she was the kind of woman who made others pause in her presence, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. She was elegant, poised, and there was always an unspoken tension when she was near. But it wasn't her beauty that caught Elias off guard. It was the way she stood there now, wrapped in a towel, droplets of water still glistening on her skin as if she had just stepped out of a bath. The sight was unexpected, and for a moment Elias didn't know how to react. His mind, normally sharp, seemed to lose its clarity in that instant. "I didn't expect you so soon, Prince Elias," she said softly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Elias began, his voice faltering, suddenly aware of how uncomfortable he felt in her presence. He cleared his throat. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Seraphine gave a slight, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "You haven't interrupted anything. Come in, please. Caden is waiting for you inside." But Elias couldn't move. Something about the way she stood there, her presence so unexpectedly intimate, made him feel like an intruder in his own world. The tension between them was thick, but it was more than just the strange moment at the door. It was something deeper, something that neither of them understood yet. As Seraphine stepped aside to allow him in, Elias noticed the faint scent of jasmine, an aroma that always seemed to linger when she was near. He stepped into the house, his mind still racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at him, those eyes, full of unreadable emotion, made him feel both seen and unseen at once. The estate was quiet, save for the soft crackling of a fire in the hearth. Caden was in the study reading something that appeared to be a letter. When he saw Elias, he put it down and gave his friend a warm, familiar grin. "You're late," Caden teased, though there was a glint of something else in his eyes, something that made Elias feel more self-conscious than usual. "Mother already prepared dinner. I'm sure it'll be to your liking." Elias offered a forced smile, his thoughts still lingering on Seraphine. "I'm not that late, am I?" "Of course you are," Caden said with a laugh. "But it's no matter. Come, sit. Dinner's ready." Elias followed Caden to the dining table, but his attention was divided. Seraphine had disappeared into the kitchen, and Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something was different tonight. The air felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. The conversation at dinner was light, but Elias couldn't help but notice how the light seemed to dance around Seraphine as she moved. She was elegant in everything she did, pouring wine, setting the dishes down, speaking with the calm authority of someone who had seen and lived more than anyone could guess. And yet, there was something about her that made him uneasy. He had always admired Seraphine from afar, but tonight she felt closer. Her gaze, when it met his, held something he couldn't quite name. It was almost as if she knew something about him, something that he didn't yet understand. As the evening wore on, the tension grew. Elias could feel it in the silence that stretched between words, in the way Seraphine's eyes lingered just a moment too long. There was a strange pull between them, a gravity he couldn't ignore, but it wasn't just her presence that affected him. It was everything about her, the way she held herself, the way she seemed untouched by the world, even as the world's secrets whispered around her. Finally, after dinner, Seraphine excused herself and disappeared into the hallway. Caden looked at Elias as if sensing the strange shift in the atmosphere. "I think she's a little different tonight," he said, though his tone was more curious than concerned. Elias nodded, though he couldn't explain the feeling that had settled in his chest. It was more than just her presence. It was a strange connection, one that felt ancient and yet brand new. He felt as if he were on the verge of understanding something, but it slipped through his fingers every time he reached for it. As Caden moved to clean up, Elias found himself alone in the study, gazing out the window at the moonlit night. The shadows in the room seemed to stretch longer than usual, and for a moment, Elias wondered if the weight of his future was pushing down on him in ways he didn't yet understand. It was then that Seraphine appeared in the doorway. Her presence was sudden, yet somehow expected. She didn't say anything at first. She simply stood there, watching him with those unreadable eyes. Elias turned to face her, his heart beating faster than it should. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," Seraphine said quietly, her voice almost a whisper, like the sound of the wind against the trees outside. "Earlier at the door, it wasn't intentional. I didn't know you would come so soon." Elias met her gaze, unsure of how to respond. "It's fine," he said, though his voice didn't sound as certain as he felt. "It's just unexpected. That's all." Seraphine nodded, though she didn't seem convinced by his words. "I understand," she said softly, stepping into the room. "Sometimes the unexpected is what we need the most." For a moment there was a silence between them, thick and heavy. Elias wanted to say something, anything that would break the tension, but words failed him. He didn't know what to say because he didn't know what he was feeling. There was an ache in his chest, a longing he couldn't name, but before he could speak, Caden appeared in the doorway. His smile was faint, but there was something strained in it. "Mother, Elias, I think it's time for bed." Seraphine nodded, her expression unreadable. She gave Elias one last look before turning to leave. As she did, Elias felt a pang of something he couldn't define. Was it regret? Longing? He didn't know. But he did know one thing. Something had shifted tonight. And he wasn't sure he could go back to the way things were before. Cliffhanger. As Elias made his way to his room that night, a soft knock at the door stopped him. He opened it to find Seraphine standing there once more, her face unreadable. "I never meant for things to become complicated," she said quietly, as if sharing a secret. But I cannot deny the truth anymore, Elias. Your future, our future, is tied in ways you cannot yet understand. Before he could ask what she meant, she turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving him standing in the doorway, more confused and lost than ever.